Mexico and China have a complicated relationship. For example, Mexico and China produce competing products while having a huge trade imbalance. How do you define the current state of Mexico-China relationship? What are the biggest obstacles of this relationship? And can you give one example of the obstacles? And what are some of the future opportunities that for collaboration between the two countries?
So starting with the obstacles, clearly, as you mentioned, the trade deficit is a huge obstacle. The fact of the matter is that when China joined the WTO in 2001, the country it probably most displaced from the U.S. market was Mexico. So Mexico was a country that witnessed or experienced direct Chinese competition most directly probably in the world. And we import a lot from China. We export very little. In my experience, China says that it opens its markets to Mexican products. In my experience as ambassador there 6 years, that was not the case. There were always non-tariff barriers to Mexican products. So we have a difficult commercial relationship with China. Nevertheless, we have a long diplomatic history as countries. I think Mexico was the first country after Chile to recognize Chile never broke relations with China, but I think Mexico was the first Latin American country to recognize the China after the Communist Party came to power. So we have a very long tradition. Now, keep in mind that for the most part of this administration, like for the most part of most of the world's administration, China has been closed off to the world. There have been no delegations out of China or no delegations into China from outside the world. So clearly that has been something that has prevented any cooperation or dialogue or closeness past the Zoom meetings, which aren't that many. So a big component of China's foreign policy was set on the delegations, both out of China and into China. When I was ambassador there, I received 2 Mexican presidents into China. I accompanied Vice President Xi Jinping to Mexico. Hu Jintao went to the Mexico to the G20. Then President Xi Jinping went to Mexico as newly elected president, Secretary General, once he had taken power. So there was this back and forth, and all the way down at all levels, cabinet ministers, governors, mayors, all sorts. All of that has been frozen. All of that has been frozen. So you have a whole generation, for instance, of mayors, of governors, of cabinet ministers who have never been to China or received a Chinese delegation. And naturally, that just adds distance to a relationship that was not natural in the commercial sense. So I wouldn't say we have a complicated relationship. I would just say we have a distant relationship.
And you said the relationship has been closed off for a while. And why was that?
Because of COVID-0. There were no delegations out of China or into China. So since December 2019, no Chinese delegation has visited. And remember, these delegations, and it's not just presidents, it's provincial party secretaries, it's cabinet ministers, it's Communist Party. They travel abroad and they help establish relationships past the diplomatic, bilateral diplomatic aspect. So if a party secretary of Jiangsu province travels to the Mexico and visits the state of Michoacan, and just that helps establish a relationship. And then the governor of Michoacan travels to China, and it was a very complex relationship that has been frozen for a long time. So there's been no Chinese delegations coming to Mexico, no Mexican delegations going to China. So we're just left with a commercial delegation. And that is a complicated relationship.
And we know that the COVID-0 policy has ended already. And is the exchange back on track now, or it hasn't been so?
No, I think no. The answer is no. There have been no Chinese delegations coming into Mexico that I'm aware of, and no Mexican delegations going to China that I'm aware of. As you, I'm sure, are aware, going back home, it is still complicated because there are very few flights. It is still complicated for foreigners to get visas into Mexico if you did not have a working visa, which has just been, I believe, the Chinese government has just said that valid visas issued before February 2020 would still be valid. There aren't that many in Mexico of those valid visas because China would only issue 1-year visas to Mexicans. Unlike Mexico, Mexico issues 10-year visas to Chinese citizens. China only issues 1-year visa to Mexicans. So it's hard to go to China. So there have been no resumption of delegations.